Thank you. Let's call the meeting, the order of Public Works and Utilities Committee. Councilman McGregor, you want to give us a few words?
Oh, I didn't realize I was up for the invocation. I guess
Oh, you're not. I looked at you and the way you were stroking your bed until I called on you.
sure. I'll say a quick blessing. Bow your heads. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the privilege it is to live in this city. I just pray for our city staff and that you would just watch over them, help them to get them home safe to their families during this holiday season. In your name I pray. Amen.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Chair, entertain a motion of minutes for October 21st.
Move for approval. Second.
Probably moving second. Any question on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're down to item E. E1, authorization to notify South DOT and the city intends to accept the maintenance of a new 36-inch reinforced concrete pipe culvert. Who's going to address that? Mr. Clapper?
I can take that one, Mr. Chairman. That's
Okay, Mr. Fountain, I'm sorry.
yeah, thank you. This is basically an item that Charleston Water Systems is installing as part of their stormwater improvements associated with the West Ashley Sewer Tunnel Extension project.
Yeah.
Because the city maintains the surface drainage system on the Greenway as part of our surface lease agreement with CWS in return for park access and, of course, the ability to have functional drainage in the area. We're proposing to agree to take over the maintenance as per SCDOT's typical requirements, primarily because there's a check valve associated with the culvert under Arlington.
Okay, just for the committee's benefit, that West Ashley Sewer Tunnel runs basically all the way from the Limehouse Bridge, comes from Johns Island to the railroad bed or bike path, what we now call it Greenway, and goes all the way from there all the way to Plum Island. It's like a $80 million project. It's huge. It's like the I-95, seriously, of wastewater sewage for West Ashley. So it's a major, major project. So anyway, just wanted to give you, when you hear West Ashley Sewer Tunnel in the future going forward, because that's something that's going to play out over the next couple of years or so, just think without it, West Ashley would be in bad shape. Call a question. All in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 2. Is that one you're going to pick up also, Mr. Fountain?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we had a motion on the.
Move for approval.
Second. Oh, I thought we did. But yeah.
I thought we did, but anyway.
I thought we did.
Properly moved.
Apologies.
That's okay. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of item E1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now E2, maintenance of a granite curb, bluestone.
Move for approval.
Properly moved.
Second.
Any input on that? Kind of standard. I call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? On that, matter of fact, I had a brief conversation with Mr. Keene last week. You know how we always get these granite curb and guttering requests, and the state says, you want granite curb and guttering, that's fine, but you're going to maintain it from here going forward. So we get a number of these with a high degree of regularity. My understanding, and help me out here, either Mr. Fountain or Mr. Keene, that process also involves, I guess, us applying to the state and then the state getting back with us. Is there any way we can abbreviate that? I mean, we accept it anyway. A lot of times we grumble about the maintenance and not going forward, not having the funding. But if we know we're going to be putting in and we are going to be putting in these granite curb and guttering, is there a way we can expedite the process beyond what we're doing now?
Mr. Chair, I'll speak to this since we did have a moment to speak about it last week. And I had, for the committee, I had one item to add. That's why I had reached out to the chair related to this. this is something the city has done for decades, this process of council accepting maintenance responsibilities in these cases, because state DOT will not maintain material other than standard materials like concrete within the right of way. And council member, I'm looking in to see if there's a way to make this process faster and smoother for people. I so far I have a feeling we can't. We're going to have to keep doing this and coming to the committee, but I'll give you a full report once I'm finished investigating
Right,
this.
While you had the microphone, why don't you explain the item you want to have added?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On Thursday afternoon last week, I received a letter requesting that we take maintenance responsibility for granite curb and also actually concrete sidewalk on UG Street in association with a project you're all familiar with, 275 UG Street, which is property that the Housing Authority owns and is about to be developed for really a well-designed affordable housing, but it includes those streetscape improvements to UG Street. The engineer reached out to me on Thursday. The agenda had already gone out, but I spoke with the engineer working for the developer and the housing authority, and they said there's some urgency around this because they're trying to get all their permitting done in December, and this approval kicks off a series of approvals they need. So I reached out to the chair to see if you all would take that up today so we could proceed to council on it. It's a pretty standard request. It's for the frontage on UG Street, which would be granite curb, and then the concrete sidewalk within the right of way that the city take maintenance responsibility for that frontage for the affordable housing.
But let's let the chair, let me entertain a motion to add that to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Probably move and second it. Any more questions on adding that item to the agenda, today's agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So since we've had some discussion on that, let's go ahead and deal with that item right now. Do we have a motion to approve that acceptance of?
Move for approval.
Second.
Probably move and second. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Parker has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Just quickly, is that pretty customary?
I mean, with the granite curb and gutter and us taking the responsibility to maintenance?
Correct. I mean, with I think I asked this at the other meeting with a private developer. This is pretty standard operating procedure, right?
It is. Basically, the highway department, if you look at, curb and guttering most places, it's concrete. Come to a historic city like Charleston, and we try to, maintain our history, and in some cases, we put in granite curb and guttering, in particular if it's already there. And the state says, well, that's fine, but we're not going to maintain it. And so then we pick up that responsibility. But the reality is that granite lasts a long time, longer than that cement. So hopefully we won't have too much maintenance problems with it going forward.
But again, but it's going to be placed by the new development coming in, correct?
That's right. They're gonna pay for it. Yeah, the city's not gonna pay for it. It's just they can put it into specifications, and once past inspection and approval, all of that. And if something happens, I don't know, 15 years from now, and it has some maintenance has to come into it, then we have to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I carried the motion or not, Mr. Clapper, did I? Or that was under discussion?
That was all under discussion.
Okay, now let's carry the motion. All in favor of approval of that granite around 77 Hugie Street, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. King. We now the E3, acceptance and dedication of a stormwater drainage easement. This goes out to Bees Resources LP.
Move for approval.
Second.
Probably moving second. Any discussion on item E3 or any input from staff on E3? Hearing none, all in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item E4, acceptance and dedication of the revised exclusive stormwater drainage easement in association with the James E. Lewis East Side Apartment Project. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move for approval. Second.
Probably moving second. Mr. Fountain, you all have anything to add to this?
I can certainly give some background if it's helpful, Mr. Chairman. This is, there was a prior drainage easement that went through basically the center of the parcel that the facility was constructed on. That easement was abandoned and the drainage was shifted to the city-owned property that fronts to the north of James Lewis Jr. for an inline storage system that also conveys water through the area. So this is just the platting and acceptances of all the easement agreements for that.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So please say nay. E5, acceptance and dedication of exclusive stormwater drainage easement on the property owned by Thompson Kane Hoy Properties LLC.
Move for approval.
Properly moved and
Second.
probably moving second. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. E6, acceptance of temporary construction easement on Rebellion Road, outfall maintenance. Pleasure on that one. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Properly moved and who's the second out there? We need a second.
Second.
Okay, properly moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on item E6? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, we've got a number of temporary encroachments. Excuse me? Oh. Temporary encroachments are just for information only. Mr. Clapper or Mr. Fountain, are there anything exceptional that's out of the norm on either one of these?
Mr. Chair, this is Tim. We issue those encroachment permits out of my office, and there's nothing extraordinary in this list here. Pretty
Okay.
standard.
Just for information. We have no public service department update, which is a good sign. That means things running on time. Trash being picked up, hopefully people being happy. H1, stormwater management update. Update on the status of the current small projects. Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my screen. Graphics. Some of these agenda items will sort of blend from one into the next, but starting with our update, some recently completed projects. Some of these over the last 18 months or so, we did the Savannah Highway, and we've reported on all of these to the committee in the past, just sort of highlighting these to set up the discussion for looking at funding allocation for future projects. So this with the Savannah Highway drainage improvements, where we added some under drains and new inlets along Savannah Highway in front of the Burns Downs area to get this ponding water off of those sidewalks due to sort of the, as you can see in the bottom right photo, the drainage down off of the highway with really nowhere to go previously. That was completed. Willow Walk rear yard drainage swale installation. This was phase 1. You can see it during one of the major storm events we had this year, doing what it's supposed to do, hold water, and then eventually convey it into the outfall. We'll talk about phase 2 in a minute. Property retrofits. We accomplished 2 of those on Oak Forest Drive, 1 on Shoreham Drive, 5 between Mallor Court and Wolk Drive, and actually 1 on Shelley, because a kind of example here in the upper left, another example here in the middle 2 photos. These are all shown during some wet periods of the year, showing that they're holding water, vegetation starting to get established. And then lastly, the Wagner Terrace outfall cleaning, specifically on Peachtree Street, where you can see the work through the marsh. So those were all completed, ongoing projects.
Hey, Mr. Fountain, go back to Peachtree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we monitor that in case it silts back in?
So we do, Mr. Chairman. We have a few years under the general permit where you don't need to go out for additional permits in order to do kind of touch-up cleaning as a lesser permitting threshold. So we do keep an eye. We actually had gone out couple of years ago and done a little bit of extra work on the Burns Downs outfall that we had cleaned for that after one of the major storm events. It sort of had some limbs and other debris that blocked up a portion of it. So yes, we do monitor and do touch-up work if necessary.
Thank you.
Again, for the ongoing projects, just briefly, again, setting up our discussion into the small project request, Sandhurst conveyance. This is over in the Sandhurst neighborhood off of Sam Rittenberg, sort of by the cafeteria, and Ms. Rosa's are in this area here in the parking lots. Finish our conceptual engineering. We have a budget for the project improvements, and we're looking right now at feasibility of lining a system that you can sort of see in this black arrows that run behind in between a series of homes. That's the primary current drainage outfall. It's a failing pipe system, so we're looking to line that system right now and then build an improvement project that will bring a new drainage pipe in addition to that outfall down one of the existing roads through a little bit of additional space between two of the homes to try to stop some of the flooding that occurs in the upper portion of the basin, block some of the roadways. So the lining work we think we can accomplish currently. We finished all the conceptual work. The overall new culvert construction project will have to be considered eventually as a CIP. In the CIP as a capital project, it's expected to cost between $2 million and $3 million. So that'll shift out of small project after the lining and become a potential capital project.
Mr. Fountain, when you say lining project, that means piping it or what? Putting a pipe in?
Yeah, so there's an existing pipe between the backyards of the homes that drains out sort of this whole drainage basin in blue that you can see here.
Right.
That pipe, part of it was built decades ago out of corrugated metal pipe. Of course, it drains into a salt marsh, so the pipe is rusted and is starting to collapse and not function. It's also undersized. So we need to build a larger pipe in addition to lining the pipe, but we're looking to line the pipe to preserve that outfall capacity, which basically means going inside the pipe, cleaning it out, and then putting literally a liner into the pipe to prevent it from having additional collapse or other issues. We did look at abandoning the pipe and instead just building a larger section. One, we have worry of how long it'll take to build the new pipe and what would happen to drainage if we had a short-term failure. Two, in order to lose this pipe, it's actually a pretty large pipe, mostly 36-inch pipe in the rear yards. We have to go to a box culvert in the roads. There's a lot of sewer in this area as a pump station and some other issues. The utility conflicts start to get so expensive that it's better to line it, even though lining it is actually quite expensive as well. So that's the cost benefit we just finished kind of working through.
Okay, thank you.
Ferguson Village, this is over in James Island. We had completed working with the Charleston Museum on a memorandum of agreement where they maintain the downstream drainage system through a piece of property that they own over on that far side of Riverland. We completed a survey and have been going door to door and having a series of meetings. So 9 meetings so far in the neighborhood trying to acquire drainage easements through the neighborhood of Ferguson Village to be able to clean out those ditches. We actually received our first 4 or 5 easements from the neighborhood. We still have a number of properties to work through, but we're able to get some of the downstream easements, keep that project going. Again, most of the financial expenditure is now done. We're just in the process of working with the owners to understand the easements and see if we can get comfort in those gratis easement dedications for us to do additional.
Just curious, how big is that piece of property that the museum owns?
It's a very large piece of property. It's the Dill Sanctuary. I think it's maybe, I would have to check to be sure, something like 100 acres, 50 acres on the far side, extending out into the marsh. They do some activities. I think it was a donated property to them some time ago.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Anita Drive drainage. This is in West Ashley. We're acquiring, this is Anita Drive.
But before you start that, I see Ms. Parker has her hand up. Let me address it. Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and thank you, Mr. Fountain, on Ferguson Village. Are those all right-of-ways, city right-of-ways, or are we doing that work on the state maintained as well? Do you know?
So the only area we're looking to pick up maintenance on are on the private properties in sort of what is an existing old ditch and swale system. It just doesn't have any easement on it for us to be able to go in and maintain. There are pipes under Riverland Drive that we've had SCDOT come out and clean, and I believe Ferguson itself is a DOT road, but we haven't looked at trying to take over and maintain those ditches at this point. It's just the rear yard ditches that work through the neighborhood.
Okay, all right, great. Just a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I mean, this is, ideally that perfect time to get the state actively involved, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fountain, but this is, we can do all this work in Ferguson Village, which floods heavily. Can we or have we actively been talking to the state? Because if we do all this work and we don't resolve sort of that under Riverland Drive issue or those exterior ditches, I mean, are we really going to see an impact, a big change?
So we definitely do need to keep the state involved, and they have been so far on that Riverland Drive culvert section, but you're right, that is an important point of coordination and agreement where they continue to clean that Riverland Drive culvert as well.
Okay, and just last question. I mean, how do we continue that conversation? Is that y'all are talking directly with SCDOT? I believe that's Representative Stavronakris's, location. I mean, what do you suggest? I mean, I'd like to do anything that helps because you've done a great job here, but I know that if we don't get that, that other portion, if we don't get the state to sort of pick up their slack, then, we're not going to see a big change.
So this one is a little bit easier than many of the other areas because it's a single culvert pipe. I'm not saying that the state is always able to respond quickly, but it is because it's a single discrete ask. They will respond and assist with cleaning. I agree there are some other projects that are more challenging, like Secessionville Road or some of the longer, more complex systems. Some of Savannah Highway can be very difficult. Those are conversations we need to keep having with SCDOT. This one's a little bit more straightforward because it's a sort of a single culvert that we're trying to clean with SCDOT.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, the next one was Anita Drive in West Ashley. Anita Drive sort of loops here off of Magnolia. The bikeway, the West Ashley Bikeway, was a large drainage improvement project, the first phase of Forest Acres. What we're looking to do here is to tie the drainage along Anita Drive and part of Magnolia into the bikeway system. Again, there's a kind of a remnant channel and a little bit of piping here. We've been acquiring easement to be able to improve that connection and get this neighborhood to drain out during large storm events. We've actually had quite a bit of success in property discussions for that easement with the property owners in this area. There's been quite a bit of flooding over the last couple of years, and I think there's a lot of desire to resolve it. So we do have some verbal acceptances from those owners. We're doing plats and easement documents right now, and look to basically construct that middle of next year is the plan. Howell Avenue Flood Storage Project. This one we've talked a little bit about committee, that we had $1 million of National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the NIFWF funding towards this project from some additional funding the grant agency had that they reached out to us about because of the success of the Church Creek project. So we're adding in at the end of Howell Avenue a property that the city had previously purchased with the Greenbelt funds in collaboration with Charleston County. And this you can see some of the flooding on the right in this area, to do a retrofit of the property. You can see on the left, the property sits in this kind of wooded area here, behind Fleming Road at the end of Howell. We're going to basically convert it over into another passive park, bend the existing stream channel through the property to allow a lot of this property to flood during heavy rain events and pull some of that water out of the streets and private properties and into this. The county is doing some additional downstream improvements as part of some of their project work. So a lot going on in this area. This started out as a small project for the design work. We ended up bringing in the $1 million of NIFWF funding. We're able to build it into a larger project, including some bike ped interconnectivity between some of the public roads in the area. And then the county, we're actually finalizing an MOU that we'll be bringing to council over the next month or so for the county to help with excavation and disposal of a lot of the old fill material in the parcel in preparation for this project. So another nice example of multiple entities working together to get something done out here. And again, the small project, as you've talked about quite a bit, Mr. Chairman, the small project funding is what let us get to a design that we were able to get that additional $1 million of funding from National Fish and Wildlife Foundation because we had a basically shovel-ready project, which is what they needed for a very short-term amount of grant funding that had to be done basically in 2025. So Asbury Place pipe upsizing, this is also in West Ashley. It's kind of this is the greenway running through the project here. This is basically upsizing some, as you would expect, undersized pipe right before the outfall. Should provide a lot of flooding relief on the upstream side. We finished all of our survey work, most of our design work, and we're looking to get construction mid-2025 on that pipe upsizing. We did do some work on the outfall previously, but not from a formal cleaning perspective, just enough to dress it up for this pipe improvement. The Oak Forest outfall system improvement, we talked about this one again quite a bit at committee, Mr. Chairman. We've acquired easement from all of the downstream property owners now through this red section. We're working with some of the upstream property owners on the other side of 17, but 17 itself is a choke point. We have a conceptual design that we need to improve the pipes under the greenway and eventually under 17. That side will shift to a potential capital project because those will obviously be more expensive. But we are continuing with the small project to get a cleaning permit to clean this section of outfall through the parking lots, which will help with some of the short-term flooding in combination with those property retrofits we did on the upstream. Rebellion Road outfall cleaning, we just passed the temporary construction easement for this project. A little hard to see on this map, but there's an existing easement that runs from the road through the properties into the marsh. The ditch has just migrated out of that easement in the marsh, so we got a temporary easement to be able to clean that existing channel, which is how the Corps and state permits work. That construction is out to bid right now. Should start early 2025 for physical construction. Hazelwood Taperwood pipe upsizing. We've gone through and cleaned and regraded all of the ditches in the neighborhood, including the large rear yard canals. Surveyed all of the pipe work, built the stormwater computer model, and now are currently designing those pipe upsizings with construction expected by late 2025. There's quite a few pipes, as you know, Mr. Chairman, to upsize, and that will tie in well as we hopefully go to construction on the DuPont Wapu project towards the end of next year as well for that first phase where this will drain into. I think this might be the last one. Yes, last one. Willow Walk rear yard swale phase 2. So we had previously completed phase 1, which is sort of this area at the front of the neighborhood. That's been really successful. So we're going to extend that back into the rest of the easement that runs behind this first set of homes for more stormwater storage. That we've currently got a tree contractor working to remove trees out there. We've relocated a number of fences with the residents, and then our field ops crews will go and construct that early to middle next year.
Yeah, Ms. Parker, I see your hand. Council Lady Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Fountain. Do you, I'm sure your team has, but has your team been out there, for community engagement, as obviously letting them know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've gone door to door and talked with all the residents, and we're helping one resident remove a fence that they weren't able to get removed. So yes, it's always anytime we're in people's backyards, it's definitely a process of lots of notification and discussion because it's inconvenient for everybody, us and the residents, obviously. So it's very important to keep talking with them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's all I had for that item, Mr. Chairman.
Well, can you go back to Oak Forest? Like 3 or 4 of them.
Yes.
And thank you for all of these. I think all the council members are certainly, and the mayor obviously, happy with these. That choke point at 17 underneath, do we have to get a permit to be able to clean the culvert underneath Savannah Highway?
No, we will work with DOT on that one as well to help get that culvert cleaned out. As soon as we have the outfall cleaned out, we'll be able to help push a little bit more water through that system.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Parker, Council Lady Parker, is your hand up or that's from the last time?
No, I'm sorry. It's
okay, no problem. Okay. All right, Mr. Fountain, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I can move on to the next item, which is
I thought that's
the allocation of
allocation
next year's funding.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We'll do that. So most of that last item really was setting up knowledge of where we are now for the potential for 2025 projects. These are going to be a little bit quicker to go through because obviously we haven't done our design yet. So the first item is looking at North Nassau pipe improvements, basically in the vicinity of Romney, Cool Blow. North Nassau is a relatively small pipe. Currently, we're looking to install new pipe potentially that will only help drain out the area at lower tides, but it will help drain out quite a bit of heavy flooding we have faster at low tides. Relatively straightforward project other than utility relocations and obviously working in a roadway. So that's one project. And we'll go through the list and we have a summary at the end. Wagner Terrace outfall, moving down to the next set of outfalls, looking at Piedmont and 10th Avenue, which are sort of a combination of outfalls that run through the neighborhood behind the church, if you're familiar with the area.
Yes, I
That
am.
drains a very large portion of Wagner Terrace and is very impacted by flooding. So we're looking to clean that whole system over a series of outfalls over a 2-year period, as we'll talk about. It's a very long system.
Will it help with Gordon Street?
It will, yes. Yeah, it drains out
Okay.
of Gordon as well.
Okay.
One more retrofit project on Oak Forest Drive. We acquired another property through a council-approved FMA grant. This is a picture of a previous retrofit we did out there. Basically, we have one of the adjacent properties. We've acquired it. We've just completed demolishing the property. We have a draft design. We'd like to take it through to construction. That's in West Ashley, of course, as well. Sandcroft. This is basically a flooding issue. Is kind of between Sandcroft and Madagascar, where there's quite a few cul-de-sacs and neighborhoods here that all try to drain back, and it's a little harder to see in this graphic, but they all try to drain back into a series of ditches that lead into kind of marsh and not quite marsh transition in backyards, and the water just can't get out. I mean, it is piped there pretty effectively. It just doesn't get into the channel that you can see is all the way out in this middle of the purple section. So basically looking at going in and cleaning that outfall system from where all those pipes and ditches try to join up all the way out into the marsh more effectively. That'll provide much quicker drainage to this area of pretty heavily flooding for a relatively short section of outfall cleaning. The major challenge here will just be access to get back there through yards working with the homeowners. Wimby Drive. This is another area off of Oak Forest, basically going upstream from Oak Forest across the road and into trying to acquire rear yard drainage through a number of these homes. There's some pretty heavy flooding up along the roadway of some of these properties. So we'd like to, all of these rear yard easements in this case, drain out all the public roads through this neighborhood. It's just a very old system of drainage where instead of the roads draining down the roadways, they drain through these rear yard systems. So we can help all of these roads and properties drain a little bit better by acquiring that easement. First step is just going through and talking to homeowners, doing the plats, doing the easement agreements. Relatively inexpensive, but very time intensive. So that's what we're proposing, a small project to try to get that moving and eventually be able to drain out all of these roads. Exchange Street outfall permitting. This is moving to the peninsula. Basically noticed quite a bit of flooding in an area. We would expect to see it at high tides during rainfall, but not seeing it drain out correctly. And the investigation has been there's a relatively short, again, period section of marsh that is preventing the outfall pipes from draining kind of at the bottom of Waterfront Park here. So putting in for a relatively small, straightforward project to do some significant drainage improvements along the street section. Donahue Drive drainage improvement project. This is one that we've been working on sort of in collaboration with CWS. Mr. Chairman, looking at upsizing a pipe along an easement that drains out Donahue Drive in this neighborhood. And then also doing some initial research and design to the outfall system that flows through the access road of Charlestown Landing. Charlestown Landing's been very willing to work with us on this as well. And this is one that Representative Stavronakis has said if we get a good design together, he'd be willing to support some potential funding from the state because of the impacts with Charlestown Landing as well. So I think, again, good one between us, CWS, and potentially the state trying to come up with a good project idea here for some future funding. Confederate Circle pipe replacement. This is one in West Ashley, kind of in the bottom half of Windermere. Basically, there's a pipe that is not located within a drainage easement. There is a drainage easement, but the pipe was put in a different location for some reason. So we're looking at relocating the pipe into basically into the drainage easement, in combination with the property owner, shifting the drainage easement around a little bit and getting the road to drain effectively, sort of replacing a failing pipe in a better location, in coordination with the property owner and our desires to have drainage successful in the area. So somewhat difficult from access purposes, but we think with the homeowner being willing to help us where we relocate that easement to, we'll be able to get it through relatively affordably. Cross Creek neighborhood drainage investigation. We've done quite a bit of maintenance and some cleaning work in Cross Creek, helped with that flooding, but we have 1 or 2 areas we still see holding water longer than we would expect after the maintenance work. So we're going to do some investigation under a couple of the roadways to see if the pipe crossings need upsizing or if they're starting to fail. They're also CMP, they're not in salt water, but sometimes we'll see those start to fail, and maybe that's what's happening. So this is a lot of the investigation work and a little bit of funding in case it's a straightforward improvement. Last one, I believe, no, one more after this. This is 404 Trapier Road. Basically, this is out on James Island. There's a section of roadway that has a marsh outfall that is pretty occluded, pretty blocked up. We need to obtain an easement for where the outfall sits, then clean that out so we can get this sort of lower line section of road to drain more quickly. It does flood and block access to the few properties that are down the road on this location. And then, yes, I'm sorry, here's the last one. This is Signal Point Road, also on James Island. It's an area of pretty heavy flooding. We've been working collaboratively with the county. The county has done the first phase of their large-scale drainage improvement on Grimble. They are coming back in the next 1.5 years to do the upstream improvement just north of the school, which will free up the ability for Signal Point to drain down into that improved canal system. What we need to do with this project is improve the connection of our drainage system on Signal Point into that improved county system. So this is the design work there. We've worked with James Island PSD as well. They've got some facilities in the area about how to get that water connected more efficiently. So another good collaborative project between the county, the PSD, and the city. And then this is just the summary of what we had just talked about, the funding that is still to be spent in the current projects we had discussed under the previous item at the top here. That funding moves over into this upcoming fiscal year. The planned fiscal year potential for FY 2025 funding towards these new projects we're discussing. And you will note that some of the funding will also continue into 2026 for these new projects. I set up the cash flow perspective from a project timing perspective as well. Even if we added more money into the 2025 year, many of these things are long-term projects that won't be ready to go to construction in 2025. So they're appropriate for 2026 funding. And as you, Mr. Chairman, I think the mayor have both discussed, we'll be having a conversation in 2025. Do we want to add any additional funding in 2026, which would help us start additional new projects in 2026, as we would be relatively close to capped out with new project work in 2026 under this plan. There's a little bit of money to start additional projects, but not a substantial amount of money. We're showing 830,000 approximately already being allocated out of 2026, for these short-term projects. That was a lot. That is the end of the presentation.
Yeah, that's a lot, but no, I think we all followed well. Any questions from committee members to Mr. Fountain?
Do we have to increase that budget?
Well, I'm getting to that. That's just right now what any projects that he went over, but I'll come back to your question. Ms. Park, I see her hand. Councilwoman Park.
I had the same question,
question.
So I'll
Okay.
just wait.
All right, well, let's kind of keep it on what Mr. Fountain is out of breath, got through explaining right here. Any question on those projects? All right, now, Mr. Fountain, if we hypothetically, we had a rich uncle and we had another $1 million. So the small projects goes to 2 million. Do we have the capacity to get to it? What do you need? You need more project managers? Help us out.
So for this first 9 months or so of 2025, with the funding we still have to work through from the ongoing projects and the new funding in these next year projects,
right,
that's pretty much at capacity for us. This is a little bit of a stretch, probably. We did we did hire a project manager for the small projects a few months ago who's been doing a good job getting up to speed. We did have one vacant project manager 2 position, which is for our larger projects, but helps out with the small projects. That position has a tentatively accepted offer that might start at the beginning of 2025. So I'm pretty confident, without any unexpected turnover, we can get through everything that's currently set up. I think in 2025, we'll need to have a discussion for what we fund in 2026, because I think we will be able to do more work than what we're showing here in 2026. So that I think the time to have that discussion is definitely over the next 6 months or so, so we can all have a clean expectation going into setting up projects for 2026 of what we want to fund and what we could get constructed.
Okay, Councilman Gregory and Councilman Parker, did that satisfy you? Okay, Ms. Councilwoman Parker.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for that explanation. But so well, yes and no. I mean, so 2 questions. I mean, first, with all the projects that you just listed, obviously these are some multi-jurisdictional, overlapping. So are there plans, or how are we going to approach, say the county or the PSD, whomever may be, especially in my district, to sort of try to reach additional funding? And then I'll let you answer that. And then my second question is about the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ongoing projects generally have either grant funding or have led to earmark funding or have some kind of collaborative work between the different agencies. The proposed projects for FY 2025, part of the design process, kind of that concept into design process that we are funding, is that discussion with those entities on how will we collaborate, how will we work, and then setting us up for like specific asks to the state for appropriations or to other entities for grants or funding allocations. So that is absolutely an important part of that discussion for those FY 2025 projects for sure.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. And then, I mean, Councilmember Waring, my question was really just, regarding the 25 budget. I mean, are we keeping this small project allocation at 1 million for the 25 budget? I mean, I know we've talked about this for years, but
well,
I
if you
mean,
remember, it started out at 500,000, 500,000.
Mhm.
And obviously, Mr. Felton suggested these small projects, and we all know the bang for the buck, Mr. Mayor, that we get in the community. You'd be shocked at how these small projects, people see them, and the impact is almost immediate when we get a chance to do them. I think we all are itching to find another source of funding, and I think we will. Obviously, the mayor's out there scrambling, trying to get every $5 we can on the rocks. That said, the capacity to be able to get them done,
Right.
hiring the engineers. Recently, the mayor, myself, Mr. Keene, had an open meeting, an open talk meeting, if you will, with design engineer firms in and around the area. Mr. Fountain was there as well to find feedback on our, stormwater ordinance has been out there now several years, and we always said we would come back and visit it to hopefully see if we can critique it, to try to help make things a little bit more efficient. My understanding is we got some, while I was there, we had to end up leaving, coming to the budget workshop, but we got some pretty good, interesting feedback. I think, Mr. Fountain, I think you can share some of that, and I think we're in the process of working through some of that
That's right.
feedback, positive,
Yeah.
constructive feedback.
If I may, I'd like to address kind of that and some general paths forward for us to consider.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
We absolutely need more funding for flooding. And Matt and his department have been pretty organized about trying to prioritize both the big and the small. One of the things that we're looking pretty heavily into is, as part of the water plan analysis too, looking at each drainage basis and figuring out, mapping out where everything needs to occur and establishing respective budgets for that. And then part of the idea that we have is the potential for additional stormwater fees, which I know nobody's really all that excited about, but as Councilman Waring mentioned, it's a pretty good bang for your buck. But if you're going to ask people for additional proceeds, you've got to be pretty organized and defined on where it's going to go. So they need to be able to see where the improvements will be if we're going to even consider it. So the idea was to get this process of changing the billing over and through into 25, and then mid-year, like similar to the assessment for employee compensation, to look and see where we are and what a path forward would be. In this case, probably not for the balance of 25, but for a 26 initiative, so that we're very organized. And we're looking not just at potential increases in stormwater fees, but also other sources of income. Like, for example, I think that the next shot at the transportation sales tax should also potentially allow for stormwater improvements as part of that initiative. So there's a lot of moving parts here on both the small funding and the large funding, and look forward to working with this committee on different options as we move forward.
Hey, Matt, this is Dudley. Just a couple of questions.
Yeah, Councilman Gregory, I can't see your hand, but anyway, go ahead.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
On the Wagner outfall cleaning, will that take care of the creek bed at Gordon?
It will basically clean. It will clean that whole system from behind. I'm trying to remember what the name of the church is.
The church, yeah.
Yes, the church that runs through there all the way through 10th and then out the other side into the open river again.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, it won't resolve all of the flooding starting at 12th Avenue behind the church, going through 11th and then through 10th. It won't resolve all of the flooding if we get enough rain at a high tide, but it will reduce how often it floods, because at low tide the water will be able to get out, and will reduce how long it floods, because when the tide falls it will drain out much quicker. So it's a real significant improvement, but not a complete resolution of all flooding, just because of how low the some of the properties on Gordon are.
Okay. On the Howe Avenue, on the island, I mean, that street, as you know, is multi-jurisdictional. And when it rains, it's horrible. We also have another project at the end of that street? Am I correct? Will this all come together?
Yeah, there's three different projects all working together in that area. There's the city/county collaborative project we just talked about at Howell Avenue to add some storage to the upstream. Then there is an improvement project by the county with one funding source looking to connect the drainage that runs between Stefan and Howell down through Hollings Road to the kind of the lake that's an old borrow pit between Central Park and Hollings. Then there is a third project that the county is working through a different funding source. That's why they're two different projects to improve Central Park where that crossing is, so you don't get the tidal overtopping of Central Park Road, and you can get some additional storage by adding some check valves into muted tide gates, in this case, under that road to protect that storage. So all three of those projects together will make a very significant improvement in the flooding in the area. I think the Howell Avenue one is most likely to be the quickest starting project. We're hoping to start within the next couple of months. It will not, again, resolve all the flooding by itself, but in collaboration with those other two projects will make a huge improvement in this area.
And I know we were running into problems at one point getting permission from the owners because we have to go, I think, behind their homes are to do some construction or cleaning or something.
So there's been a challenge for the county trying to pick up easement between Howell and Stefan along the canal system that runs back there. What we are trying to do now is basically give that system somewhere to drain. Right now, it's a large canal. The county is hoping to clean it out and provide a little more storage in the canal. They have never been successful in getting easement along
Right.
the system. It's mostly on the county side of Howell Avenue. Um, if we can get the area to drain, the blockages in the canal will become much clearer. And I think there is a significant hope from the county that will incentivize people to provide easement along the canal, and it will make it much easier to drain. Even if there are blockages, the blockages will just limit how much improvement you see on the northern half of Howell itself. You'll see the improvements on Stefan because it ties in further south. You'll see the improvements on the southern half of Howell over to Fleming. It'll be the northern half of Howell that is generally the drier half that is very hard to get back to unless you get some additional easement.
Okay. Thank you.
I see Councilman Seeking's hand. Councilman Seeking.
I've had my hand up for so long, it took it down automatically.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
man.
good. It's all good. It's all
These
good.
hands are
Just
teeny,
to
man. We got a lot of people on the screen.
I get it. Just to touch on a point that the mayor made earlier, as we collectively look forward to 2026 and another revamped TST, and we're going to need one. The whole selling point, I think, for drainage and having drainage be a part of it is throughout the county, not just the city, but across the county. Where do we store excess water? It's in the streets and it's in the roads. So as we build consensus and list projects for the TST, and you're looking at billions of dollars, certainly the big selling point there is roads store water. We need to move it. These need to be projects that are included in the TST. So and we can't wait a year or a year and a half. We need to start building that now to get consensus. So I just want to lend my support for drainage, flooding relief being part and parcel of where we go when we finally bring this to a successful resolution at the county level on a TST.
Great idea. Councilwoman Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your comments earlier. And to follow up on Councilmember Seeking's comment, I completely agree. And I wholeheartedly think that we need to be doing the same thing at the state level. I mean, over here on James Island, a lot of our problems arise from SCDOT roads and the maintenance. And I know that we have this small project allocation, and that helps us to gain, that funding at that state level. But I think if there's a way that we can work, while we're doing that, the next year, I know that staffing and funds are all of that. But if we don't get some of these things in the pipeline, I mean, we can't ask our, state folks for the funding needed. I just want to put that out there. So agree, but I would like to see that same thing at the state level. Thanks.
It's definitely considered a funding source for sure. So we're going to hit them up hard. It's just on those certain things, and we are, but we just need to be super organized about the ask. And with the base action flooding plan and what Matt's department's doing and has been involved with, I think we're there. But it's a larger strategy that I look forward to working with this group on.
Okay. Ms. Park. Okay, you take a hand down. Okay. Mr. Fountain, thanks for the information, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the certainly vital input. Item 3, update on stormwater utility fee billing. This is one I've been sitting back waiting on Chris Kringle to come down the chimney. Who's going to update us on that?
I can do that as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Give you a quick highlight slide. We've had quite a bit of progress.
Thank you.
Did start sharing. Hope I did. had quite a bit of progress on the account management system since our last update. As you know, previously we'd contract with Black and Veatch,
Right.
their management system. We've been working with CWS to go through how CWS currently manages and bills. We've met with both Berkeley County and Charleston County regarding some options to bill through the annual tax bill, the same billing service, not as a tax, but as a fee on that bill, similar to a solid waste fee. Both counties have now agreed to that concept, and Charleston County has provided us with an IGA. We've talked with Berkeley County about IGA terms and think we have a good path forward with both entities. We've discussed with CWS, and they've supported continuing to bill with them through the end of 2025, which would then let us switch to starting our billing through the tax bill basically at that end of 2025 billing for the 2026 year. We're currently building a tax parcel-based account management system with our consultant rather than a water utility-based account management system, which is a little bit different. We're going to recalculate the fee for each parcel to make sure that everyone's being charged accurately. It's a good time to do that while we're rebuilding the system. And then we're going to go through basically having an SOP, a process for how you update the bills every year within the system to make sure they continue to stay accurate, since we'll be maintaining that system. Next steps. In spring of 2025, we'll have to come back through council with the ordinances to allow us to shift our billing to that annual county tax bill service and move away from CWS. We currently bill through CWS by ordinance. It's just a straightforward change, but we'll have to do the 3 readings to do that process. In the spring, we'll want to be notifying users of the upcoming billing schedule change. Obviously, shifting to an annual bill versus a monthly bill has a different cash flow impact on people. So for some of the very large users, especially if they have a different fiscal year and we'll be splitting across the fiscal year now, we want to make sure everyone is aware that that's coming and to be prepared for it. In the summer, we will provide our billing data to the counties. That's the time frame target they have, that we have to get them all the information of what to bill by very early in the summer. Then at the end of 2025, we'll stop billing with CWS, notify them to stop, and shift to 2026. Again, presuming all of this moves through ordinances at council. And then 2026 forward, we'll be working through updates to our own internal database and billing in the future. One thing we're going to do as well, Mr. Chairman, is we're looking at billing everyone potentially on an impervious area calculation in future years, rather than a sort of what's currently a simplified single family bill where everyone gets a flat rate bill if they own a single family parcel. We're looking at trying to convert it to where the bill, similar to what we do for everyone except single family homes, is based on how much impervious area is on the parcel. That may let us, we want to do some analysis of it first, but it may let us have a slightly smaller bill for people with smaller homes, especially, and a slightly larger bill for people with much larger homes, which is how the utility is supposed to operate, and I think is generally a good policy. It's just that prior to kind of modern AI, it was much harder to do those calculations on every single parcel in a municipality or in a county, so that simplifying assumptions were made generally. So we're gonna do some analysis and come back. Sorry, as my lights turn off in the office. Come back to the council and the committee with what impact that would have and what it would reflect. Mount Pleasant went to a similar system a few years ago. That theirs is a tiered system where they just have different flat rates rather than a true impervious area calculation, but we'll look at some options like that and come back with more information for the committee to consider.
Well, that's good information. Thank you, Mr. Felton, for all your efforts, and you and your team. Any questions of Mr. Felton?
Mr. Chairman, I should say that CWS has continued to be a really good partner, and both counties have been very receptive of the idea and supportive of working with us on this.
Let's make sure to make that recognition tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting for all the here. Let me ask this: anywhere in this, anybody looking at the pass fees? We got Black and Veatch and all those.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We did do an assessment of the pass fees at your request. I do have that information as well. We do currently have about 500 overdue accounts with a combination of unpaid stormwater fees of about $390,000 between those accounts. I would say they typically run on the order of $1,000 to $2,000, a little bit less for a large number of them, but $1,000 to $2,000. There are only a few that have substantially more than that. We do have a series of different processes we use for aged fee collection, but that will certainly shift with the county tax bill, and it generally
Is that for one
higher.
year or is that for multiple years, the total you have?
That is cumulative. That is the cumulative total in aged billing.
Really?
Anything over 90 days.
Okay. I thought the number was larger than that.
I thought it was 5 million or something.
No, not that much,
Okay.
Hopefully we'll collect about 5 million more when we go to a broader billing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there is a different, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, there's a different question of, are we under billing people
Right.
from how kind of aged the system is from its origination to when it was last kind of completely reassessed and re-overhauled like we're currently doing.
Right.
That is where we expect to potentially have a larger billing amount, because when you look at cities of similar geographic area and density to us, we seem to be a little lower on revenue collection than you would expect to see. And again, that we do have an interesting geography with how linear we are, so that could be what's happening. But there also is the potential for just underbilling currently, as we've mentioned, people without water meters or parcels
Right.
that are having other challenges.
Listen, not one of them. I own several pieces of, probably somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen properties that don't even have a meter. I don't pay stormwater fees because I
That's
don't
right.
have a meter. I guess I'm asking for it, but anyway.
And that is an area I think we will see quite a bit of additional revenue. And we do have a significant balance of outstanding fees that we do need to address, and this will help us address some of those
Okay, great.
long-term challenge properties, but it is not an overwhelming amount of money compared to the annual revenue.
Thank you, everybody, all allies to this process for all the efforts on this. Any questions on committee member? If not, we go into EH4, Church Creek flooding storage project. This had passed earlier today, real estate committee unanimously.
I'd move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Properly moved, and we have a second out there. Anybody wants to second the motion?
I second it.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear. Properly moving second. Any discussion on this project? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. E5, amendment, approval of.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we take 5, 6, and 7 together.
Second.
Properly moving seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now the motion to approve 5, 6, and 7.
So move.
Second.
Probably moving second. Any discussions on items 5, 6, 7? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Listen, thanks a lot. Got a lot of information. Went over a little bit, but not too bad. Any final comments?
Good info. Good information.
Okay.
Good info.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right, man. Take
Thanks,
care of
Matt,
yourself.
for all that.